today we are talking about these very fun topic. Can I say? Starts with a P word.
Oh, it's profit.
It's
love profit. Sorry, you wanted me to answer that question?
I certainly did.
I completely synced on Zoom. This is really working out for us. It's profit because actually, as I said to someone the other day, they were looking at a project and the project wasn't making any money and they were really trying to get it to work. And I was like, do you like money? And they were like, oh, yeah. I'm like, well, then that's probably not the way to go. And the thing is that the romantic view of developing for profit and of making money, sometimes we can get swept up in the potential of a house or what we can do with it.
Yeah.
But it's on this particular project or this particular site, it doesn't stack up or it needs a different way of thinking.
And then people start to make a whole lot of compromises. It's like, oh, well, I could do some DIY here, or I could do this to make it work, or actually, I'm not too tied to having to do this. And although that's a good thinking practice and thinking laterally about problems, if you feel like you're trying to make something work because you really want it to work, it doesn't work for a reason.
Right. And so that becomes really interesting because it's like, what do the numbers actually tell us? And we need to be able to have that play in our numbers because it becomes kind of contingencies and fallbacks. But sometimes what we do is we make all the compromises, but we never adjust the sale price. And so our expectations are still pretty high, but we've kind of chopped the meat out of the build or the value change, and we haven't adjusted, like it hasn't been followed all the way through. So there are lots of ways you can play this game. I guess you were really fantastic on this and you put together a list of 10 top tips to make this roll.
We certainly did.
We did. So, when we say we, it was actually Kribashini, just to be honest. But I love them. I've reviewed them and I agree.
Oh, so glad.
All right.
I mean, look, we get asked questions all the time from people who are wanting to develop, and they're always such big questions that don't have straightforward answers. And, you know, one of the things that we always go back to ask anyone who's doing our developers masterclass or in our BuildHer stream or in our network and they want advice is like, have you done the FISO? And they kind of always are taken aback by that. And they're like, well, yes or no, or they've kind of done a FISO, but they haven't really done a FISO that looks at the whole project in its entirety. So we just wanted to run through our top 10 tips for making a profit.
Yeah, so let's start with the FISO, which you just did. So number one is always do your FISO. So what does that mean? That doesn't mean write down the numbers on the back of an envelope or send them in a text message to someone. That means put them on the spreadsheet. Now, if you've done enough of these spreadsheets, you get a pretty good feel at what's going to work. And actually, we were looking at a couple of FISOs last night. One that worked really well that we're looking at. Thank you. And another one that was for someone else and it just wasn't going to work, but they didn't do the feasibility. They sent the numbers to us and you get a pretty good gut feel after a while of going, well, that just isn't going to work. Yeah. So we have a template. You should use the template. It's in resources. So buildhercollective.com.au resources, or maybe there's a link underneath this video. And it's $7. It's not a lot, but it could save you a lot of money.
Absolutely can. The next top tip is build in a contingency. So one of my favorite things is to make sure you've got a contingency in your project and in your FISO, but it's a slippery slope because you want to have a reasonable contingency when you have the least amount of information about what you're doing, what you're building, what the design is, what the risks are. And as you move through your design process, you can actually pull back your contingency a little bit, maintaining some of that contingency for construction and for things like latent conditions or things that you don't know are going to pop up. And that might be something in the ground. It could be a buildability issue. It's totally unplanned for. And that's what your contingency is there for.
Yeah, the less you know, the greater the contingency, but you don't want the contingency to blow the project out of the water and be the thing that, it's an art. Actually, that's what I'd say about it. It's kind of an art that you have to practice and you have to get good at. It's like knowing how much of anything to work and how that value is going to work, because you can work contingencies in a number of ways. You can put them as a line item at like contingency, which is what we do, a bucket of money, but some people just use a higher build cost. But the problem is if you pull all the money out of all the areas to bottom dollar it to make the profit high, then you've got nowhere to go when something goes wrong. The other one is team. And I think team is one of the most important things. And that could be your architectural team or your finance team, your accountant. It could be the team around you that you're working with, your build team. Knowing, understanding and trusting them is really important. So you've got to get the right advice to do the right thing on the right site. And if one of those members isn't working properly, then it can cause big issues. Like it can be a big cog in the wheel. And having the right team can enable you to do the right thing at the right time. So team is really important.
Actually, on our Rathmines project, we got some really important advice from our team early on, but that advice saved us a huge world of pain. And I think it was around 40 grand as well. So they can save you money. They'll give you the right advice at the right time, but you need to think about them as your team. Right? So not just in the silos doing their own little bit, like bring your whole team together and have a meeting, a round table meeting with everyone who needs to be in the room or the Zoom room.
As it might be in lockdowns.
Now, the next one is and this kind of ties into the next one, is get good advice early on. And that's really about strategizing with your pre-purchasing team. And like Rebecca says, it's a lot of those people she just mentioned, accountant, sales agent. You may even work early on with an architect or a designer to help you understand what the possibilities are on a site. So sometimes that means you have to pay for advice prior to buying a site, or you're paying for some advice after purchasing and maybe a due diligence period, depending on how you've structured your deal. So it can be really beneficial to do that, but you don't need to do it on every single project.
I guess the other thing I would say is understand who's in your team that can help you and who your go-to people are. Like we look at development plans all the time. We love doing that. We do it for other people because everyone needs a second eye. But we also have other people go over our plans, seasoned developers, and we'll put that back to other people. And we'll talk through our logic and our thinking, almost like a presentation. We're going to present the numbers to someone and go, okay, well, this is how it's working out for me, and this is what we think we're going to get. What if you do it like this? It's not quite working. What are our different options and what are our fallback positions? And so we work with members of our team because our team is specialized around construction and development. So there might be a specialist in their area, but they're pretty much all doing developments and work themselves as well. So they've got kind of a bit of game on, maybe. So we do that too. The other thing is, and it goes back to, all of these things are interrelated, I guess, is understanding the market and the value that you bring to that site. And it may be taking a 3-site and making it a 2-site. It might be taking an 8-site and making it a 2-site, or making it a 1-site, or taking a 1-site and turning it into an 8-site. It's really about understanding what's going to work best there, what the different inputs are and what the best outcome is, because every time you make a change, it's going to change the build cost, it's going to change the sale price, it's going to change the output, it's going to change the ease. And what the market wants and what the market will play for is different in a different area. That's kind of given. It's also different in a different location. So someone rang us yesterday and tried to sell us something in this area. And it was pretty exciting from the outset, right? North-facing backyard, 1,000 square meters, $3 million in Northcote. Like all day long, that's a really great site until you worked out where it was. And you're like, there's no way that is a good site. It's got a heritage overlay. You can't do anything with it. And no one wants to live in that spot. Like there's just like as bad as you can. So sometimes the numbers will lie to you and you've got to understand, well, who's going to buy that? And for that one to work, you had to get someone to buy on a main road for $4 million on the outside after you developed it. And with the amount of options that they had, there was no way that anyone was ever going to, like, I just couldn't, never say never. I could not see that working, and I wouldn't, it wasn't an investment that A, sat with us, but B, we would take.
Well, and that's the thing, that level of experience or oversight and understanding all the different factors that come into play help you weed through a good deal and a bad deal. And that feeds into the next one, which is know who your buyer is and and design with them in mind. So what are they needing? What is your buyer needing in the home? And what is your buyer needing in terms of location or amenity or site access? There are all these things that come into play in terms of design. And you can think of them as kind of like design objections. So do you need to resolve the car parking issue? Do you need to resolve park access? Do you need to resolve just the flow and the amenity in the home? So always design with your buyer in mind. And I think that people go wrong because they'll tend to design with themselves in mind. And your values and how you live could be different to how your potential buyer wants to live in that property.
And again, that's kind of a bit of an art form as well, because you want the house to have enough personality to speak to someone and for them to really kind of connect with it. But you also need it to be, I don't want to say generic enough, but like
I know what you mean.
Enough
like
of a palette to be able to overlay their own style and their own look and feel, and to feel connected and comfortable with it as their own. It's a balance, and there's no, like, I know people want this definitive, do this, do this, do this, do this. All these things need to be considered, and it's how you put together that creates the value. And that's the excitement of the game, because it is a game.
Yeah.
Maybe a long, expensive game. But it is a fun game too. So planning, it comes back to how are you planning this project, and how are you planning your different, your different criteria, like your funding. How are you planning what you're going to do with the project? How are you planning your backstops, your sales strategy? All of these things need strategy behind them. And they all need to be planned, and kind of planned in the first realm. But if that first one doesn't work, what are you going to do to get out of the deal? Or what's plan B? Because sometimes plan A isn't going to work, and so plan B and C need to come into play.
And even to the point of what your build strategy will be. So whether you're going to hire a builder, whether you're looking to try and do some stage your build, whether you're looking at being an owner builder, and in some applications that's not appropriate. So really planning through all the phases of that. And another interesting one that comes to mind.
Sorry, I jumped in, but I would say that's really important. You're right, because the way you build is so important.
Now, shopping around. It's not actually appropriate to shop around on every single piece of purchasing that you need to do for the build. And what I mean by that is you may not want to get 15 quotes for, a piece of timber fence, but where appropriate and on a big piece of expenditure that's very important, you may want to shop around, because there is so much variance in the market, but there's also different qualities that you can buy. So understanding what you're trying to buy, shopping around when you know what it is that you're trying to buy, and also negotiating well. And that we really try and teach this to our BuildHer community, because there's so much to be said for understanding the value of good purchasing.
Yeah, but good purchasing doesn't do anything if you don't understand the process. It's like you've got to know where things sit in order of hierarchy, and what's important for your time, and how that process kind of flows through, so you know what you need to do at each stage, who needs to be involved. Because one of the biggest things that happens to people is time gets away from them. And that time means money, because as soon as we're holding the property, we've got money at stake, and every month the interest adds up, and every hour that you have someone on site, it costs you money that doesn't need to be there, and people will want to work with you in the future or not. So you're trying to build a team and a process that's going to work, and that you can evolve from, and that you can replicate, and you can move on, and you can learn with, and you can grow with. And so understanding the process and being super organized, knowing who slots in where and how they're working, and how that works in your longer, bigger plan. Super important. Now, the one thing I'd say, and I know you agree with this, is if you don't know this stuff, you have to learn it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So yes, you may have renovated your house, but that is very different to doing a subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different to doing something to put it on the market. So you have to understand the process, how it all comes into play. And there's, in our opinion, you need to get advice from as
very beginning,
the people that you can, right? We get advice from everyone. We like, advice is key here. We help people through this as well, but you need to be learning from people that have done it before and done it a number of times, because they're the ones who are going to have had these things come up before.
There's so many nuances to it out there. It's actually kind of, it's like, it's just not as straightforward and clear cut as people think. And then they start the process and they kind of get a little bit lost and muddled. And before you know it, you've been in it for 6 months and you haven't actually done anything yet. And our last one is really, I guess, tying on to that, is be flexible. So be flexible about the advice that you get, be flexible about your ideas about what your site needs. You could be flexible about your design intent. You can be flexible about a whole range of things across the whole process. But flexibility can really lead to opportunity. And I think we see this a lot.
Different to reactivity though, right? Because they can get confused, flexibility and reactivity.
Yep. And I think I always get a bit nervous when I speak to someone and they say straight off the bat, no, I don't need an architect for that. Or, no, I'm not doing this, right? And it's like, okay, well, tell me a little bit about why you've decided that and what have you looked at to make that decision? Or because I think sometimes people will run off knee-jerk kind of reactions, or they've heard some stories, or they've made some decisions about things, but maybe they haven't looked at the whole process and its whole process and its whole sort of entirety, and they're really flexibly thinking about all the different options that they have. And I think that comes with insights as to how you can get a whole lot of things done and knowledge about the way things work.
We have people that are doing stuff on, with no money down. We've got people that are doing projects using volume builders. We've got people that are using custom builders, blended builders, architects, draftspeople. There is going to be a right fit, but sometimes the first solution and the thing that comes first to mind is not going to be the thing that that best serves you. So kind of being able to be open to the different suggestions and what comes up, and to be able to kind of roll with it and go, okay, well, no, we didn't expect COVID, and no, I didn't expect a timber shortage. I've never seen it before. Have you seen one before, Kribashini?
Never.
No. So what are we going to do about it? How do we maneuver our way about this? What can we change to get through where we are without compromising the integrity of the build? But sometimes we need to think about things in a different way and kind of go, well, I can't change it in it now. And sometimes, just sometimes, that flexibility leads to an outcome that's a lot better than what you're expecting in the first instance.
Absolutely.
See, it's the fun of building, I think.
It is the fun of building. It's like, how do you kind of bring this kind of chaotic world together? But the thing is, it is fun. You can do it. There is process, there is reason, but there's also ingenuity, creativity. There's problem solving, there's reaction, there's inaction. It's so much fun if you'd like to tackle something that is as much or as little as you want it to be.
I mean, if you'd like to learn more about it, because, we're always advocating for this being the most fun thing you could do with your time, then book in with a consult with us and we can have a chat about your situation and what you want to do. You'll find that on our website or in a link, possibly. Maybe.
I'm sure there'll be a link down below. We're very good at that sort of stuff.
Sometimes. But yeah, no, have a chat with us, because I reckon it's the best thing I've done today.
Thanks for joining us.